We acknowledge that WEDC has made some missteps in the conversion. We did not appropriately prioritize the time and personnel needed to implement proper financial reporting processes. We are now moving on to solutions to these issues. We have retained an independent auditing firm, Schenck SC, from Green Bay and other parts of Wisconsin to audit the books of the company. This is important because fiscal year 2012 is the first year that the organization is reporting under GAAP accounting principles. The former Department of Commerce was previously reporting under traditional state agency accounting procedures. Schenck is scheduled to present its audit to the Audit Committee this afternoon and to the Board tomorrow. We expect to receive a clean audit opinion, which is very important to us, although it is acknowledged that there will be past financial weaknesses noted in the management communication. And we've worked very hard with Schenck, cooperated fully with Schenck, and I think there will be an educational process as we move forward from their report. We have also engaged Financial Institutions Product Corporation, FIPCO, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Wisconsin Bankers Association, to assist WEDC with an assessment of our finance and loan systems, as well as an evaluation of credit risk processes. We're trying to look more like a bank, and I think that's one of the things that we probably, upon reflection, the beauty of reflection, we probably should have done earlier. FIPCO report will be presented to the Board tomorrow. We anticipate that this report will serve as a roadmap to establish a best practice environment for our agency, modeled after a small to medium-sized banking operation in the state of Wisconsin. WEDC's genesis was broadly supported and followed 18 months of study fueled by strong interest within the state's business community, economic development network, and legislature to refocus Wisconsin's business development efforts. During WEDC's transformation in 2011, the state of Wisconsin faced an economic crisis which argued for rapid evolution of a new economic development model. The launch of WEDC has served Wisconsin well in many respects, in my opinion. The formation of WEDC and other pro-business policies recently adopted in the state have improved the perception of Wisconsin's business climate, as evidenced by a boost in Chief Executive Magazine's ranking Wisconsin to number 20 from number 41 in 2010. CNBC's latest ranking puts Wisconsin at number 17 compared to previous year's 29. And the recently announced ranking from the Site Selection magazine placed Wisconsin at number 13 in a study of the top 25 business climates for the first time in more than a decade. I do acknowledge the recent report from Forbes, which found us about number 40 or 41, but their criteria is certainly different than these other organizations, and I guess we'll have to agree to disagree with Forbes on their ranking process.
WEDC was created to operate the economic development program like a well-run business instead of a state agency. And yet, when you look at the performance, we've had major accounting deficiencies. There have been sloppy management, sloppy accounting, lack of quality controls, and instability. It's been mired in controversy over the skyward bidding process, violation of federal and state policies with the CGB program, and a shortfall of $14 million. And we lacked a significant accounting system to track our loan portfolio. That is really, I think, a very sad commentary on, on our goal to have it operate like a well-run business, and unfortunately it's done anything but that, and in fact quite to the contrary so far. WEDC was created to get Wisconsin back to work, and yet our November BLS numbers show that Wisconsin has had the second worst job growth in the nation when you look at October of 2011 through October of 2012. In fact, this weekend, PolitiFact gave Governor Walker its lowest rating for the claim that we had created 100,000 jobs and instead found the number closer to 25,000. That was one of the key purposes of creating WEDC. WEDC was created to increase per capita income, and yet we failed in that measure. WEDC was created to improve our Wisconsin business climate, and yet Forbes, one of the rankings that we used as part of the Be Bold Commission, has downgraded us, and they project that our job growth will be the second worst through 2016. That really is extremely troubling. WEDC was created for private sector to give input into critical decisions, and yet the board has not been involved in major issues until after key decisions are made. And in fact, there was a letter sent from one of the board members appointed by the governor, Paul Ratspinner, who was very outspoken about how frustrated he was when we looked at the whole CDBG controversy and the fact the board wasn't even involved in that. WEDC was created to have broad expertise into economic development policy. The Be Bold report, in fact, included a very prescriptive 60-20-20% mix to get in private sector, academic experts, regional economic development personnel, and that has not been followed. And additionally, according to a survey released last month from the WMC, 1 in 5 of their member companies indicate they intend to cut jobs. Now, this is in contrast to in the nation, America has had over 22 months of straight job growth. So Wisconsin is clearly lagging behind. So what I would say part of the problem was that this was rushed. As we discussed in great detail, there was never a business plan put together. There was never a transition plan put together. But now the issue is, what do we do from here? And that's why I think that this hearing is so important, to look at this issue of board governance, to look at what the original intent was, reanalyze steps that we can take to better meet the purpose and the mission that was intended as part of the Be Bold Advisory Committee. We have a board meeting, in fact, tomorrow where hopefully we can take some of the information that comes out of this hearing and some of the points that I know Senator Lawson and I have made and take them to heart. I mean, we need to have transparency. We need to have an open dialogue of what steps can lead us to the kinds of performance that we all hope for when WEDC was created. I still believe WEDC can be successful, but I would say this: I think WEDC needs to be on a short leash. I think we've got a year. By the end of the next calendar year, if these serious problems still plague WEDC, then I think it's time to put an end to this bold experiment and to go back to the commerce style model that we've had in the past. And why do I say that? I say that only because of the fact that we knew in the creation of WEDC that there potentially was some liability with creating a WEDC, because the performance in other states have not always been stellar. We know when we looked at and analyzed the quasi-governmental authorities that existed in states like Enterprise, Florida, Rhode Island's Economic Development Corporation, Virginia, Michigan's Economic Development Corporation, Wyoming, Indiana, Utah, that there were mixed results there, and there were some serious issues. And in fact, I have an audit committee hearing of WEDC that I'll be going to when I leave here, and there's a rather critical audit that we'll be reviewing. And those will be things that I'm sure will be brought up again tomorrow. But just a couple points that were brought up during the debate in the creation of WEDC. It was brought up that in Rhode Island, the Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation Director, John Swen, resigned following reports of inappropriate use of credit cards by agency employees. And that's where, sometimes don't have as tight a control when you have quasi-governmental authorities. We knew that there were problems in Enterprise, Florida, with them improperly using taxpayer funds to pay for lobbying activities. We knew in Wyoming, their Wyoming Business Council became embroiled in financial controversies. And we knew that in Michigan, MEDC gave a $9 million in subsidy for a project in Flint that was headed by a convicted embezzler, Richard Short. And, so these are the kinds of problems that are potentially you can have. Now, despite that, of course, what we called for back as early as January, and then, of course, when this came up in March, and then again in the budget, was to have stronger internal controls, to have a business plan, to have a model that we could avoid these kinds of problems here in Wisconsin. But our internal controls have not been strong. The board has not been involved in policy to the degree to which they should be. And as a consequence, we're not even getting the benefit of private sector input to any great degree at WEDC. So clearly, there have been significant problems. We're significantly underperforming when you look at our job creation record. But I wouldn't strictly lay that at the blame of WEDC. I mean, from a policy standpoint, I think we've had an anemic economic development agenda over the course of the past couple of years. Even policies that the governor put on his special session call, never made it to the floor. And we need to be much more serious, much more aggressive about our economic development agenda.